someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Ashlee, thank you so much for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly my honor. Thank you.
You know, I was doing some research on the work that you did in the Coast Guard, and I was amazed to find out just how much of an impact you and your team had in providing rescue services to people in Texas. It was just an absolutely amazing career. It seems like you had over 14 years in the Coast Guard.
Yes, sir. It kind of went by in a flash. I'm sure a lot of veterans listening will understand, but 14 years really, truly feels like 1 year.
Oh my goodness. Well, before we dive too deep into the work that you did in the Coast Guard and what you're doing now, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your past and your childhood and how you were brought up.
Sounds good. So in a nutshell, the cliff notes about my upbringing, I was born in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, pretty middle-class home, very loving mother and father, and I really, really found myself excelling in sports throughout junior high and high school, particularly the swim team. So when I graduated high school, I sort of was dabbling with the thought of joining the military, and I came across this awesome branch called the Coast Guard that I did not know much about, but I knew that they stayed local in the United States, and no matter where I was going to be on the water, on a beach somewhere, and so that kind of sold me. And in 2005, I joined, and my career took off after that. But my roots are still in Detroit, Michigan. I haven't been back in a while. Actually, I was there a couple years ago. But yeah, I love the mitten, but now I'm a Floridian.
Well, now I know the Coast Guard probably doesn't have much of a presence in Detroit. How did you end up discovering this small, obscure branch of service?
You know, it's funny because that's sort of the understanding, is that the Coast Guard really wouldn't be in Michigan. But believe it or not, being that it's, the Great Lakes right there and the largest bodies of fresh water in the United States, it's actually heavily packed with Coast Guard units. We're one of 2 air stations there. There's one in Selfridge right there near Detroit, Michigan, and there's one in Traverse City. But come summertime, it is a nonstop busy unit with search and rescue and law enforcement and drug interdiction and you name it. So it actually is really, really busy there in Michigan.
Wow, I had no idea. Thank you so much for providing me with just a little bit of extra insight into that branch of service and the work up there.
You're welcome, of course.
So you went onto the aviation side of the Coast Guard, from what I understand. What was your time in service like?
So my job was an avionics electrical technician. So that entails basically troubleshooting and maintaining all communications, navigations, and different instruments in which the pilots use to create a safe flying environment. Along with that, the sort of unique part about the Coast Guard is that we also fly on the aircraft that we fix. So I was also qualified as a flight mechanic, which means I was a part of a 4-person crew on call various days throughout the month to go out and be there for any type of rescue or any mission that we were called upon. Sort of, I guess, similar to a firefighter being on call in case there's a fire, something like that. So my technical training school was in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and that was a 2-month rigorous training, both mentally and physically, but well worth it once I got to my first unit and I could actually fly and be a part of the air crew. It truly was just a magical time in my life.
That's incredible. Now, I know for the Navy, Marine Corps, Army, at least regular service, non-reserves, non-National Guard, we usually transfer duty stations every 2 to 4 years on average. Is it like that in the Coast Guard? And if so, where'd your career end up taking you?
Yes, sir. So we transfer every 4 years. There are the stipulations of potentially being able to extend for a couple of years if need be, depending on the situation. But my career was a little bit different. I kind of traveled quite a bit in my non-rate years. This was me prior to getting my aviation qualification. So right out of boot camp, I was in Sector San Juan, Puerto Rico, which wasn't terrible if you can imagine as a 19-year-old young girl in Puerto Rico. I pretty much had the time of my life. And then following Puerto Rico, I found myself in southern Maryland, which was St. Inigos, right on the Patuxent River, at a small boat station. Actually, I worked as a small boat engineer prior to becoming an aviator. And then after my tour there was done, I went to technical training school. Following technical training school, I was in Detroit at Selfridge for just under 5 years. And then I closed my career in the busiest search and rescue unit the Coast Guard has, and that's New Orleans, Louisiana.
Whew, I can imagine how busy the Gulf of Mexico must be, considering all the storms, major weather events, and also small boats that occupy that area. Would you mind talking a little bit about your experience down there in the Gulf?
Most definitely. We have a wide range of missions down there. I think the Coast Guard we joke that we're the jack of all trades, master at none sort of thing. So our day-to-day rescues and missions went from, shrimp boaters and fisher captains out, in distress or with a maintenance issue, all the way to missing kayakers, to oil rig inspections, to, having to rescue people off cruise ships because there's a lot of cruise ships passing through there. So it's definitely never a dull moment, and not to mention Mother Nature, the hurricanes and everything else, the flooding and whatnot that Mother Nature can bring about. So it never was a dull moment, always a different mission, which kind of kept things interesting and always evolving.
Now, I was reading a bit about your experience with one of the hurricanes, Hurricane Harvey in particular in 2017, and reading over a citation that you had received. You were part of a team that was responsible for saving 49 lives. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So I was actually one of the very first helicopters on scene after the hurricane hit landmass. And it's kind of crazy going back and thinking about it because we train so much. I mean, over 50% of our flight hours are just training and training and training to prepare ourselves for these type of events. And I think I can speak for everybody that no matter how much training we had, we all really were acutely aware of what we were going to encounter those few days. Just mass devastation and chaos. And we were just on sort of a training robotic evolution. It was just like, go out, rescue, drop people off, go out, rescue, drop people off, hot refuel, go out, rescue, drop people off. So I think every time I go back and think about Hurricane Harvey, I sort of get a little choked up with emotions, knowing that what we risked and what we sacrificed going in there, that there's so many people alive today because of our work. And there's no greater reward. There's no amount of awards or accolades or anything that you could give me. My takeaway is that there's people alive today for what I did, and that gives me the greatest reward that I could ever imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a grinding pace, being deployed here to the States, directly serving the people that we swore an oath to serve and defend. So thank you to you and your team for being able to be of service to that. But I can imagine some of the positive attention that you have and then the conflicting emotions as transitioning out of the service. What was that experience like for you?
Honestly, it was really hard. I think that any first responder or military member will tell you that we are so quick to help others. And still to this day, if I knew somebody was in trouble, I would be running to help. But we have an issue with helping ourselves when it comes down to it. And I am no different. I was dealing with a lot internally, both from my personal life and from what I witnessed in my military service. And I didn't face it because I thought that would make me weak, and I thought that, I'm in the Coast Guard. There's no way that I could be dealing with PTSD. I was under the misconception that you had to be dodging bullets in a war zone in order to obtain this sort of emotional reaction to trauma. But I was so wrong, and I went on this journey of going out during the hurricanes, having these amazing rescues, and then coming back and just having this full-blown decompression and emotional release. And then I went to the presidential State of the Union. So it was another high moment where I was there being able to represent our great service and every single person that was out there during Hurricane Harvey. And then boom, another low moment. I'm medically retired from a service that, I planned on doing 20 years for. So I did a lot of healing, a lot of soul searching, and truly, if it weren't for my foundation in faith and knowing that my Christian beliefs and knowing God had a bigger plan for me, if it weren't for that, I don't know if I would be here today, and I don't know that I would be so positive in sharing my story.
That's definitely a very difficult challenge when we envision a long career for ourselves in the military. We envision ourselves as strong superheroes, never able to be hurt, and then getting news that there may be an impact to something that we hold so vital, like our mental, physical, or even spiritual health. How did your medical retirement end up coming about at 14 years?
So I was dealing with some odd symptoms for a few years prior to my medical retirement. It was sort of odd, and it's even still to this day, it's kind of hard to explain, but I would go and feel great physically, and then the next day I would have issues with my muscle strength, my nerves. I just knew there was something internally wrong neurologically with me. But full disclosure, being in aviation, it's basically anything you have wrong with you, they're very quick to ground you and take away your flight status. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice that. So I sort of did some self-troubleshooting, some self-diagnosing and trying to figure out what was wrong with me. But when I was out during Hurricane Harvey, it was sort of the pivotal moment for me, realizing that something deeper was wrong. And up until Hurricane Harvey, I never thought what I was physically feeling would hurt or put anybody else in danger. But when I was out during Hurricane Harvey, the last couple days of rescues, my body just gave out. I mean, the amount of stress and the amount of just chaos that we encountered really put my symptoms that I was feeling on hiatus. So I came back and I grounded myself, and I went through the process of just being honest and vulnerable and saying, Doc, there's something wrong with me. I've been feeling it for a while, but it's time that we really take it serious. And so, of course, I went to this doctor and that doctor, and finally I got the diagnosis of a rare autoimmune condition called myasthenia gravis. So basically my nerves and my muscles don't communicate properly, and my immune system kind of attacks different parts of my body. But although it was really hard to separate from a service that I love, like I said, God is so good, and He put me on another path, and this ability to share my personal testimony, and with the medicine and the healthy lifestyle that I utilize today, I live a fairly normal life, and I'm very grateful for that.
I am so grateful that you have your faith. It's one of the pillars that we promote is a spiritually healthy balance, along with other things whether it being physical, mental, relational, or professional. And for me, the spiritual faith that I have has been a driving force for not only my active service in the military, but post-service, knowing that, hey, I can no longer serve in this position, but I'm going to continue to serve my community. What was your driving force to overcome the challenges that you were experiencing, and how did you end up transitioning back into civilian life? Because I know for a lot of us, that's a difficult journey.
You're so right, Danny. And honestly, I would not be honest with you right now if I didn't say that it's still a struggle some days. For so long throughout my military career, my identity lied in the fact that I was Ashlee Leppert, the United States Coast Guard flight mechanic and rescue flight crew member. And that's sort of what I looked at. But here's the beautiful thing. It wasn't until I found that my identity was in Jesus Christ and that I was on this earth with purpose and with such a ability to adapt and overcome, knowing that the Most High God of the universe was directing my steps. I mean, that just provides, and it should hopefully provide so many people with just a piece of just saying, hey, you don't have to figure it out because God's already got it figured out. Just take a deep breath. So that for me, kind of helped me a lot, just saying, today sucks. Today's a rough day, but it's going to be okay because I know there is a plan for my life and a purpose, and I'm just going to trust in the Lord.
That's absolutely incredible and absolutely accurate. Ashlee, you did something that is absolutely terrifying to me. You've self-published a book a few years ago titled "The Hurricane Within." How did you end up accomplishing such a tremendous feat? And what does the book entail?
So for me, it sort of started off as therapy. I didn't really want to share my life story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, with the entire world to judge me. That was not really something that I dreamt of doing. But there came a point in my life where there were so many things that I had never dealt with. And again, just for full transparency, I was a victim of sexual assault. Both my parents, they struggled a bit with addiction, and both of them have since passed away. Losing my parents, dealing with the grief, losing my career that I loved. There was just so many things. And I came to a point where I wasn't talking about it. And it was holding me prisoner. And by sharing my book and being able to talk on podcasts like this, I find freedom in saying those things that I never dealt with no longer control me. I'm bringing a voice to that, and in the hopes that somebody can listen to that and say, wow, she overcame that, so can I. There is hope. And so the overall goal for me sharing my book, as much as I truly do not enjoy talking about myself, God has reminded me that when you talk about yourself, you're showing my glory to people on how I got you through these things. And so that is my motivation, is to inspire the world one person at a time. And just like you said, Danny, we no longer can serve in uniform. But my joke is that, I can no longer go around flying and saving people physically, but now I'm on a mission to save people emotionally and spiritually.
I absolutely love it, and I get chicken skin about it because it sounds very similar to something that was spoken to me during a time of meditation and prayer with God. And it was, Danny, what you were doing was important. You were saving lives. What I'm asking you to do now is eternal. I'm asking you to save their souls.
Ooh.
And right?
I just got goosebumps too. It's powerful.
And when we talk about mental health issues, a lot of it is not having a purpose that is beyond ourselves, because we become so focused on ourselves that we no longer see the big picture of what's out there. And that's where the spiritual health part comes in. You don't necessarily have to have a faith in God to start to understand that you are not the center of the universe, that there is something bigger out there. And once we start talking about PTSD, suicidal tendencies, sexual trauma, we start to discover there's other people in our community that have experienced those exact same things. So thank you for the important work that you do. What else do you hope to bring to the conversation?
There's so many different avenues in which, I find that I have goals and talking about and reaching people. But for me, the overarching goal is just to share with people that they're not alone. Like life is hard, right? Like there's struggles. And, whether you just got through a storm of life or you're in the middle of a storm or there's one on the horizon, they don't stop. So the best way that we can deal with these storms is building that resiliency and faith. And I just want to be real and raw with people and just let them know that they're not alone and that there is hope. And that hope is found in Jesus.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited to listen to your book on Audible. The next time we're taking a long trip, we have a few road trips coming up. But for our audience, what are some of the key takeaways that they can look forward to if they do decide to go and read or listen to The Hurricane Within?
Well, I sort of broke the book up in two parts. The first half, I expand quite a bit on my personal life. I really wanted to build the character of who I am so that my audience understood what I've been through, some of the good things, some of the bad things. That way, when it came time for the hurricane and everything else that I talk about in the second half of the book, they would already understand me a little bit and understand me in that setting. So I guess my readers can leave inspired, and my readers can leave knowing that no matter what is something that they face, they can get through it. And it's just a beautiful thing. I'm just a nobody, but the beautiful thing is God uses nobodies to do big things. And I'm just blessed to be able to share my story. And I hope that each and every reader takes something away from it. At the very least, they can learn a little bit more about Coast Guard aviation and what it's like to fly in a hurricane.
That's absolutely awesome. And now I also understand that in addition to writing and public speaking, you also offer life coaching to people now.
Yes. So there came a point where whenever I was doing my speaking engagements and different book signings, a lot of people would want to have heavy conversations with me after the fact. But during the hustle and bustle of signing books and all that, I felt bad sort of unintentionally dismissing them. So I thought there has to be a solution. So I recently graduated in October with my bachelor's in crisis counseling. I received a mental health certification and a life coaching certification so that if this situation arises and someone wants to talk with me or overcome obstacles in their life, I can say, hey, I'm a life coach. Let me help you. And I do it for very, very cheap because to me, there's no greater feeling than helping somebody, and the money is just a bonus. So I do offer life coaching, and that's all found on my website. Actually, it's ashleeleppert.com, and there people can order my autograph book. They can read a little bit more about me and also reach out and ask about life coaching certifications.
Awesome. Is there any other book that may be coming out in the future that might coincide with some of the work that you're doing now?
Oh, I'm trying so hard. I love reading books. Writing books is not so much my forte, so I'm really trying to be better at that. There's so much that God has done in my life since my last book, and I really want to expand on where I left off in the first one. So the short answer is yes, I am planning on writing a second book, but it's kind of taking a lot longer than I anticipated.
Awesome. Well, I hope something does come out soon in the near future that we can look forward to. I did want to ask just one more question as it relates to God, because I know part of my journey to healing and recovery does include God, but the beginning was a violent refusal of even acknowledging the name Jesus. And I had a very close friend of mine tell me during a meeting we were having, just coffee on the couch. I said, like, I don't know if I can live up to what society's expectation of God is, or I've failed in so many ways. I don't trust him. And his response to me was, well, maybe God isn't who you think he is. And it spoke to me very profoundly, because how can this all-loving being allow so much pain and hurt into my life and the life of those around me? How would you go about speaking to somebody that's in that type of turmoil of just refusal to even acknowledge the existence of God?
First, I would start with just love and compassion, because just like you, I was there. I knew of a God and a Jesus, but I felt like I didn't see God moving in my life, if I'm being honest with you. I was out trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and it was this issue with my parents, and then this assault against me, and then this health ailment. And I finally thought, okay, God, what's up, man? I'm trying to show people your love, and here I am not getting it myself. But during prayer and a lot of discernment, God spoke to me and says, your pain, there is purpose for it. And just like you put gold in a fire, and the more and more you do it, the more and more it becomes pure and refined. That's what he does to his children. And also, just to expand on that, God doesn't bring evil in the world. God does not do that. That is the enemy. We have an adversary, and we have to understand the ways that he operates, and it's to cause pain, kill, steal, and destroy. And so just like in the military, you have to study your enemy and know their moves, and that's what we have to do as Christians. We have to be aware of how the enemy is moving, so that way we can counteract that with the truth that God provides. And here's, at the end of the day, God doesn't want us to figure it all out. He doesn't say, hey, I need you to be perfect. He just says, listen, I love you so much that I brought my son down to take your shame, to take your guilt, to take your sadness and your pain so that you can live free. And I mean, that is profound. And that gives me I just want to scream it on top of a mountain because it's such a beautiful thing.
Amen and amen, Ashlee. I am so grateful to have this conversation. Honestly, I could talk about this topic for forever because it's so important. But we do eventually have to move on. But before I do let you go, what's something that you would like to say to someone that is currently going through a mental battle to be here?
First, I just want to say to anybody who's going through a hard time, you're not alone. And I truly mean that. Everybody deals with pain, and there is hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. And no matter what that looks like, it could be somebody like me, a life coach, a counselor, a friend, it doesn't matter. But the more you harbor that hurt and that pain, the more it's going to be a poison for you. Release it. Find healing and hope, and knowing that there is a brighter future. And also, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just pray. Just say, God, I don't know you. I don't understand why I'm going through this, but I want to. I want to know that you're there. Please move in my life and help heal me. And he says he is near to the brokenhearted. He says if you call upon him, he will be there. And so I just hope that gives our listeners some encouragement and hope today that they're not alone, no matter what they're dealing with.
Thank you so much, Ashlee. I really appreciate having you here. And thank you for joining our audience here at the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
And thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate what you do to share the stories of the veteran community. So thank you so much. And we're on a mission.